system taken advantage of by those who can pay the people smugglers or a system of fair and safe legal route for those who need them.
Home Secretary.
Thank my honourable friend. My own parents were migrants to this country in the late 60s and 70s. Migration is woven into the story of my own family and that of thousands of people that I represent in my constituency of Birmingham, Ladywood. And let me say to him, I agree, ethnic minority Brits are just like every other kind of Brit. We value fairness and contribution as well. That is why those principles sit underneath all of the policy announcements that I've made today.
Danish.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it isn't people seeking sanctuary that are tearing our country apart. It's toxic, racist narratives and the scapegoating of migrants and asylum seekers for what is nothing to do with them. The chronic housing crisis, the running down of public services are not caused by migrants. They are caused by political decisions and by the grotesque inequality in this country. Does the Secretary of State understand that attempting to out-reform reform is actually just boosting this baseless far-right narrative and will only deepen divisions when we urgently need leadership and hope instead?
Let me tell her, I couldn't care less what any other political party has to say about these matters. I don't care what other politicians are saying on the television. I don't care what other activists are saying either. I care about the fact that I have an important job to do and I can see that there is a problem here that needs to be fixed. If it was possible to pretend there wasn't a problem because there wasn't one, I wouldn't be saying there is one. There is a genuine problem in this asylum system and we need someone to sort it out, not to pretend it doesn't exist, which I'm afraid is one of the things that fuels the division in the first place. My own constituents, since I have been Home Secretary, have been telling me directly of abuses in the visa system that they can see with the evidence of their own eyes long before any officials in Whitehall have ever clocked onto those things. It is a moral responsibility when you see something broken to fix it and to make sure that the fact that it's broken is not fueling division in our country. And let me also say to her, it is Green Party politicians who are absolute hypocrites because they talk great language in here and then oppose asylum accommodation in their own constituencies.
Speaker. Can I first thank the Home Secretary for her statement? As a member of Bradford West, my constituency, I'm really proud of Bradford being a city of sanctuary. And the Home Secretary is aware I'm also a former foster parent to an Afghan refugee. My concern is that had somebody like my Afghan refugee, my foster son, come to this country and not had a parent and just had a sibling, with the reforming of Article 8 that the Home Secretary is suggesting, he would not be able to apply for just his only sibling to come over. And that would also apply to potentially a Ukrainian woman if we were to look at contributions who had young children, came to this country and couldn't contribute because of a trauma or she experienced. So will the Home Secretary meet with me when she's doing her consultation around the safe passage for refugees and asylum seekers?
Home Secretary.
Well, of course, I will always happily meet with my honourable friend. We made clear in the asylum policy statement that the routes for these measures do not apply to unaccompanied children and other vulnerable groups. We will be setting out our specific policies in relation to vulnerable groups, including unaccompanied children, separately. So these measures do not apply to them. She will know that the scheme for Ukrainians is a bespoke temporary scheme brought in by the party opposite when they were in government and supported not just by our party but across this House. So I would expect the rules of that scheme to apply in the normal way, but I will of course discuss with her the issues that she raises.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Can I thank the Home Secretary for a copy of her speech? And in it, it says, the public rightly expect we can determine who enters this country and who must leave. And I agree. One thing that's missing, though, is verifying the people who come in. This side put forward the idea of age verification that many other countries have. Is that part of her plan? Would she consider putting it back in the plan so we know exactly who is coming in, that they are who they say they are?
Home Secretary.
Well, if he reads the asylum policy statement, he'll know that on age verification, we are pursuing AI as a more effective and workable model, unlike that suggested by the party opposite, which was all about MRI scans and bones. We believe we have a much more effective way of ensuring age verification is available and that the methodology for it actually works.
Sarah Russell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you to the Home Secretary for her statement. There is currently a loophole within employment law in the UK that it means that people who are self-employed are not subject to right-to-work checks. And that means that many people work illegally within the gig economy with no potential risk to their non-employer. Will the Home Secretary discuss how we can close that loophole while simultaneously ensuring that we do uphold rights for British workers, also the rule of law and the remainder of our rights within the UK?
Home Secretary.
I really thank my honourable friend for her question. We are closing that loophole in the Borders Bill. It is important that colleagues support us when that is debated again on Wednesday. She's absolutely right that closing down these loopholes, ensuring that everyone is subject to a right to work check and therefore build support for a rule of law approach to the way that people are able to access employment in this country is incredibly important, and I hope that all colleagues, even those across the House, might see it to support these measures later this week.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Nowhere in the Home Secretary's statement does she put this into any kind of global context about the millions of people that have become refugees or homeless all around the world, and that more than two-thirds of those are housed by the southern countries, the poorest countries in the world, with the least resources possible to do it. And what she's doing instead is putting in draconian measures against refugees trying to come to this country, failing to recognise that more than 6,000, for example, of those that crossed the Channel this year come from Afghanistan, a war-torn country that we helped to make into a war-torn country. And she instead is trying to appease the most ghastly right-wing racist forces all across Europe in undermining and walking away from the European Convention on Human Rights, a convention created by the post-war Labour government. Does she not recognise history is going to be a harsh judge on this government for undermining the whole global humanitarian principles behind the ECHR and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights?
Home Secretary.
Well, not for the first time, I'm a little mystified as to what the honourable gentleman is talking about. He starts with the global context. I guess my start point is different to his because I start with our domestic context first. He ought to know that in this country there have already been bespoke schemes for the resettlement of people from Afghanistan. So perhaps he read up on those schemes. He should also have heard from what I said in my statement that we remain absolutely committed to offering sanctuary to those who are fleeing conflict abroad. We think that the best way to do that is not to encourage people to get on a boat in the Channel by paying thousands and thousands of pounds to people smugglers, who, by the way, it's not just smuggling that's a vile crime. Those individuals are involved in all sorts of other disgusting organised crime. They should not be in receipt of money from vulnerable people. I want to disincentivise people making that choice, and I want to incentivise people coming on safe and legal routes instead. And if he would actually read the asylum policy statement, he would know it's the policy position of this government to provide more safe and legal routes. Once he's done more reading, I'll be happy to answer more of his questions.
Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do remember when the Prime Minister pledged an immigration system based upon compassion and dignity. Yet now, and it needs to be said, we've got an immigration minister tweeting deport, deport, deport. And now this policy announcement, which I'm afraid scrapes the bottom of the barrel. If we're being frank, isn't this just a desperate attempt to triangulate with reform? And like some of the other terrible policy errors that have been made in recent months, isn't it not only morally wrong, but another policy which is set to push away Labour voters? Why not recognise that now than in a few months and make a U-turn?
Home Secretary.
I would really caution my honourable friend not to defend a broken status quo. He should also know that it is foreign national offenders that are deported from this country, and I would hope he could agree that foreign national offenders should be deported from this country. We should not be keeping convicted criminals in our nation a day longer than is absolutely necessary. And I just say to him, the thing that's morally wrong is knowing that you have a broken system and then pretending either that it's not broken or defending a broken status quo. I will never tolerate that. And I have to say to him, as I've said to other members opposite today as well, I do not care for what other parties are saying on these matters or what other politicians have to say either. I have thought first and foremost of my moral responsibility to the people of this country as I fulfil my duty as Home Secretary. I have a series of reforms here that are underpinned by the values of the Labour Party and the values of the British people. They are fairness and they are contribution. I hope he will reflect on that as he reads up on the detail of these reforms.
Ben Oxojecti.
Mr. Speaker, in February, during the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, I raised the issue of the generous financial and accommodation package advertised on the government's own website, Asylum Support What You'll Get, which outlines the provision of an Aspen card with £49.18 of cash loaded onto it each week, on top of free accommodation, even if you've been refused asylum. Cards that are able to be used for gambling and have been over 6,000 times, according to an FOI. In May, I raised it again when I asked the previous Home Secretary what she planned to do to address the pull factor of this free cash and free home. So can this Home Secretary now commit to my previous calls that these pull factors must be mitigated to be a deterrent, and will those on Section 4 or Section 95 support have the benefit withdrawn under these measures?
Home Secretary.
Well, I would urge him to look at the detail of the asylum policy statement, the whole point of which is to deal with the pull factors that we know are drawing people to get on a dangerous boat and cross the channel illegally. The upshot of the reforms is to deal with those pull factors, and you will know that within the asylum policy statement we have said that it is a relatively small number, it's just under 10%, but just under 10% of those in asylum accommodation already do have the right to work, and in future we will expect them, where they have the right to work.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary is arguing that what will heal this divided nation is to get somebody who we have agreed is a refugee with a well-founded fear of persecution to feel a permanent sense of limbo, because they will never be able to plan for the long term for them or their family, because their status will always be uncertain, because they could still face deportation. Her consultation document, which I have read, talks about using enforced return for families. Last year alone, 10,000 children, many of whom are with their families, were granted refugee status in this country. I know she plans to consult, but given this does involve children, can she be clear with us whether she intends to incarcerate children with their families as part of enforced return, or whether she intends to separate children from their mums and dads as part of this policy, and how we will continue to uphold the UN Rights of the Child Convention returns of education?
Home Secretary.
Well, I would encourage my honourable friend to look at the detail of the asylum policy statement on our intentions in relation to the protection, work and study route, which in future will be the route by which refugees can contribute and earn their way to settlement in this country. And of course, it is the express intention of this policy statement to disincentivise people coming through dangerous channel crossings, and to incentivise and to push people towards what will, over time, become more generous, safe and legal routes of entry into this country with more privileged status when it comes to the earning of permanent settlement. Let me say to her on failed asylum-seeking families, because I think that is the important context that was missing from her question. There are 700 Albanian families at the moment who have made asylum claims. Those asylum claims have failed, and the only reason they've not been removed from the country is because of the policies around not removing families, that is to say parents with their children. We are not going to separate parents and their children, but we are going to consult on the removal of support and how we effectively and safely ensure that those individuals are returned. But we will of course want to see most of those people return voluntarily instead.
Liz Saville-Roberts.
Stoking fear and division through the kind of performative cruelty trailed over the media this weekend has consequences. We saw that in Caerphilly last month, where Reform UK spread information. Ukrainians spoke of intimidation. So when she speaks of unity, surely the lesson from Caerphilly is that imitating Reform doesn't create unity, doesn't win trust, but standing firm on values does.
Here, here.
I'm sorry, that's just unserious from the Honourable Lady. I'm sorry to find that the Reform Party is living rent-free in so many people's heads. I can assure you it's living nowhere near mine. These policy proposals are designed to fix what we all know to be true, which is we have a broken system. It is driving division across our country. I see that in my own constituency. I hope she's not suggesting that the evidence of my own eyes and my own experience in my own constituency, where over 70% of those people are not white, and most of them have a migration story just like my own. These are matters of great interest across our country, across every type of community in our country, and it is incumbent on any government that wants to make sure that we can run a decent system and not fuel division in our country to pursue the sorts of reforms that we are talking about today, underpinned by what I would have hoped were values that her party could have signed up to as well, and that is to say fairness and contribution.
Lauren Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank and support the Home Secretary for her statement today. This is long overdue reform of the system, such as reforming safe and legal routes, cracking down on illegal working, and also against those abusing the asylum seeking and immigration system, yet maintains support for those that need our support, such as those fleeing war in Ukraine and others that come here legally. It is about fairness. Can the Home Secretary detail when these reforms will be in place so that residents can see the outcomes of these actions?
Thank my honourable friend for her question. We will pursue the consultation, the measures that require consultation as quickly as possible, and there will be legislation in the coming months, and certainly in the second session, which we will seek to offer, obviously subject to the agreement of the House, pass as quickly as possible.
Joe Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary's asylum plans still have a gaping hole in the middle of them, in that she doesn't know what to do with failed asylum seekers who can't be returned home. Her statement today says that she's exploring possibilities with third countries. Can I suggest she swallows her pride and speaks to a third country we know is willing, Rwanda?
Home Secretary.
I do say to members opposite, they are going to have to ditch their addiction to Rwanda. It didn't work, and nobody in the country supported it. We are, as he well knows, and as members opposite well know, when you are negotiating with other countries about possible agreements, the one thing you do not do is publicise them before an agreement is reached.
Rebecca Long-Bailey.
The Home Secretary is aware that in absence of safe legal routes, the law forces the situation where a refugee has to set foot on UK soil to seek asylum, which has led to dangerous journeys and no checks or vetting taking place. Now, the Secretary's referenced sponsorship as the primary safe route. Could she clarify whether this is capable of being applied for from outside the UK? And what consideration has she made of recommendations by Safe Passage to implement a visa refugee scheme so that applications can be done from outside the UK, cases assessed, vetted and decided upon before a refugee embarks on a dangerous journey here?
Home Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. The whole purpose of the new safe and legal routes is that those individuals are accepted as refugees before they enter into the United Kingdom. The point of that being is that they never then pay thousands of pounds to illegal smugglers along any sort of route that they might travel on. So it is in fact exactly as she says, you want to accept people as refugees before they set foot on UK soil, and then once they are here on that safe and legal route, they will access permanent settlement more quickly than any other route in this country. And it is a good thing that the government is seeking to incentivise people to come through safe and legal routes and not pay thousands and thousands of pounds to criminals along the way.
Dr. Andrew Murison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was a genuinely good statement as far as it went, from which we learnt that countries could be determined to be safe at some point in the future and refugees from them returned home. Can the Home Secretary say what her criteria for safety would be? Which countries does she have in her sights? Would it, for example, include a Council of Europe and NATO member, ECHR signatory and EU candidate Turkey?
Home Secretary.
Look, I'm not going to provide a running commentary on countries. He will know that, of course, I referenced Syria specifically in my speech earlier to the House. That is because the basis on which many thousands of Syrians were making the claims related to the regime that was in place before, during the conflict, which has now fallen, and there is a new regime. We have already made a small number of voluntary returns to Syria. Other countries are exploring enforced returns to Syria, given the change in circumstances there. We will, of course, look at the same as well. We will, in the normal run of things, when it comes to considering whether a country is safe for a person or not, keep those matters under review, as I know he would expect us to do.
Olivia Blair.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yes, we have a broken system, but does the Home Secretary really believe that having to flee violence, war and persecution means you have won a golden ticket if you are lucky enough to get refugee status here? Does she understand that such rhetoric is deeply offensive and feeds division? Does she accept shutting down routes for settlement will damage integration in our communities and will only strengthen reform, not beat them? And wouldn't a better way of measuring contribution be allowing people to work and pay taxes?
Well, Secretary.
Well, I'll gently point out to her that we have a large number of failed asylum seekers, that is to say people whose claims have not succeeded and who do not have the right to be in this country still here, despite their home country being safe. Many of the people who claim asylum in this country have passed through multiple safe countries across Europe before they end up in the north of France. And we've seen claims go down in Europe and increase here in the UK. And I would just encourage her to remember that we are opening safe and legal routes. The whole point of these reforms is to disincentivise the journeys that lead to criminals earning a lot of money and people being in the north of France, and to move to a system where we have safe legal routes. We've accepted people as refugees before they set foot on UK soil, so that when they come here they can earn and contribute and be fully integrated through models like community sponsorship, which we know work.
Martin Wrigley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I thank the Home Secretary for sharing her experiences earlier and thoroughly condemn that sort of behaviour she described against her. It's unacceptable in any case. The Secretary of State has described rapid decisions on appeals. Does she also believe, as I do, that rapid decision-making on the initial application of asylum seekers should be promoted and highlighted? And would she consider putting a timed target, a timescale target, for decision in a matter of weeks and not years in place with her department? And her remarks on Ukrainian guests over the weekend. She described them going home when peace broke out. May I remind her that peace will not mean safety? Please can she assure the House that a more considered and considerate response may be found? And will she meet with me and Ukrainian guests to resolve that issue?
Well, let me just say to him on Ukraine, a point that I think was not understood fully by those that were questioning me at the weekend. It is a bespoke scheme created only for Ukrainians with its own rules. It's not subject to what we have set out in the asylum policy statement, because he will know, as is the position in relation to our discussions with the Ukrainian government, these individuals are welcome in our country so that we can keep them safe. They're not classed as refugees because they're here temporarily on that scheme. We will always uphold our obligations under that scheme. We supported it in opposition as well. He is right on the point about rapid decisions. It's important that decisions made at first instance, but also through an appeals process, are of high quality. That is one of the ways that we have to make sure that they don't get constantly appealed. But our current system means that even though we've made huge progress on decreasing the backlog on initial decisions, the appeals backlog has grown. And over time, as people sit in the appeals queue, more rights are accrued, and unlike any other type of legal order in this country, the order to leave this country being not complied with still allows people to accrue more rights in the interim. We do not run a good and effective appeal system at the moment. It's why we're going to create a new one, but I can assure him that at its heart will be early legal advice, truly independent adjudicators making the decisions, but doing so in a way that allows them to fast-track claims that have a low chance of success, make sure that the right decision is made quickly, one claim one appeal with a certain outcome at the end, not subject to years and years of a merry-go-round around the courts.
And before I call the next member, can I just ask, make a plea that we keep questions and answers concise? Luke Akehurst.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I wholeheartedly welcome the measures which I believe will tackle a failure by the previous government to maintain one of the most basic fundamental functions of government, control of our borders. My constituents in North Durham are worried and they're angry about the proliferation of HMOs to house asylum seekers locally in towns and villages which already have significant social and economic problems. Will these measures lead to lower demand from the Home Office for this type of housing for asylum seekers and the return of these HMOs over time to use as family homes for local people who need affordable housing?
Home Secretary.
Well, I can say that the totality of the reforms we believe will lead to less pressure on accommodation. So I think the short answer to his question on HMOs is yes, but I do recognise the problems that he notes, because HMOs are a big problem in my own constituency too.
Lewis Cocking.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I really do thank the Home Secretary for her statement. Broadly, this is a tiny step in the right direction, but does not go far enough. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, to truly show the Home Secretary is listening to the British people, does she agree with me that if you enter this country illegally, you should never be allowed to stay?
Secretary.
We will always abide by our obligations under the Refugee Convention, and we do believe in offering sanctuary, but we make no apology for the fact that those who enter illegally by crossing through the Channel will have a longer path to settlement. We are deliberately incentivising other safe and legal routes into the country to show that that is the proper way to seek sanctuary in this country, not pay criminals a lot of money and put your own life at risk.
John MacDonald.
When we introduce new legislation and new procedures, it's important we calculate the implications and where it could lead us to. Like my old friend for Vauxhall, I work with, and have done for decades to be frank, with asylum families, and in particular the children. And what I find is the children are extremely traumatised, and what we try to do to them is give them security and peace of mind for the family. Now what will happen is every 30 months that security could be undermined and they could face the removal. Could I ask my right honourable friend whether or not she's consulted the Children's Commissioner, or education psychologist or others about the implications of what she's saying today? And the other issue as well is that in the past she's mentioned forced removement of families. I just remind my colleagues, in the past that was happening, and the families were often detained in Harmonsworth Detention Centre. I used to visit the children. That was one of the most distressing experiences I've had as an MP. Could she give me the assurance that no child will be placed in detention as a result of this policy change?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me tell him, firstly, there will be a full equality impact assessment for all of these measures in the usual way. And as the consultations take place and as the legislation is drafted and then debated in this House, I'm sure all of the individuals that he has said, has mentioned, will have their say. I would expect them to as well. I would just gently remind him that when we're talking about the asylum system today, we're not just talking about those who arrive illegally on small boats. We're also talking about people who arrive on visitor visas, on student visas and on work visas, who the minute those visas come to an end immediately claim asylum. We know that the relative generosity of that route, the effective automatic permanent settlement after 5 years, is one of the things that attracts that behaviour. It is right that we clamp down on that and disincentivise people trying to stay in this country in that way, and instead incentivise people who will come through safe and legal routes. As I say to him, as we get order and control in the system, the safe and legal routes will start relatively modest. I do anticipate them growing more generous and growing over time, because this country is fundamentally open, tolerant and generous.
Sammy Wilson.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the honest and realistic assessment which the Secretary of State has made today in relation to the broken asylum system and also the division which immigration is causing across the United Kingdom. She has been innovative in some of the proposals which she has made, but only time will tell whether the potential loopholes will undermine the honourable objective which she has set, namely to cut back on illegal immigration. In my view, the only way of doing that is to make sure that people who enter this country breaking the law get returned immediately. But on the issue of the ECHR and its the expanded interpretation, can she give us an assurance that whatever changes she makes in that will apply fully to Northern Ireland, where unfortunately the previous government embedded the ECHR in the Windsor framework and has proven already to be a means of undermining immigration policy?
Home Secretary.
Well, I can assure him that the Minister for Immigration has met with his counterparts in the devolved administrations, and we will keep all of those conversations going, because this is a reserved matter rather than a devolved one. And Madam Deputy Speaker, can I just say, in case the microphone did not pick up my answer to my honourable friend on the detention of children, I can give him that assurance that he sought in his question.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do urge caution. We're in this predicament because the very people who championed Brexit failed to warn of the consequences of leaving the Dublin Agreement. Since the EU has moved on and will introduce its asylum and migration management regulations next summer. Instead of creating insecurity, what discussions has the Home Secretary had with the EU as to how we can explore how we work with the regulations to protect our human rights and responsibilities through this progressive and pragmatic approach?
Home Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. Countries across Europe are tightening up their rules, and it is important that we do not become or remain an outlier. And in fact, it is a regular complaint of many of our counterparts in Europe that at least 30% of those who travel across Europe are seeking ultimately to come here to the United Kingdom. It is something that has come up in all of the conversations I've had with multiple counterparts across Europe, and it is one of the reasons why we have to make sure that we can have a system that works and that we get our own house in order.
Lincoln Job.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A constituent wrote to me asking whether I could get a wriggle on with his EUSS application. We checked out with the Home Office, and it turns out that he was subject to a live deportation order. In fact, it was issued in 2017, and we did deport him. Somehow he got back into the country and made his application. I said to the Home Secretary's predecessor that if she was prepared to, with a stroke of her pen, reenact that deportation order, I was prepared to drive him to the airport myself. Now that we've got a Home Secretary that's going to get a grip of this situation, I offer the same thing again.
Home Secretary. Get a uniform. Get a bus.
Well, I look forward to welcoming his application to join immigration enforcement. If he wants to write to me about that specific example, I will look into it. I know that the systems at the Home Office need a lot of tightening up. It is work that actually my predecessor started when she brought in a new permanent secretary into the department to make the necessary changes, and it is the work that I will continue.
Ian Lavery.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agree with my right honourable friend that this system is absolutely smashed to smithereens. It's smashed to smithereens because of 14 years of destruction from the benches opposite. But of course we all want to see the control of our borders. We want to stop the boats. We want to see better, safer, legal routes. But I appeal to my right honourable friends and honourable friends on the front bench. When the opposition parties, the Tories, Reform UK, not to mention that odious racist Chancellor, bankrolled by the world's wealthiest man, are championing our policies, is it not time to question whether we're actually in the right place?
I have a lot of time and high regard for my honourable friend, and what I would say to him is he shouldn't allow mischief making by those that he names to throw him or our party off course. I hope he will have heard the support from our own backbenches today, from members of Parliament who can see that these are changes that are necessary to fix the very broken system that he agrees that we have. And I would just ask for people, please don't keep repeating the name of a man who doesn't even think I'm English. I find that very offensive, and I would just ask everyone to refrain from doing so. We don't need to do that, and we do not need to go there. Don't fall for the mischief that others are making here. We know there is a broken system. It is our solemn responsibility as a Labour Party and as a Labour government to get on with fixing it.
Charlotte Kane.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agree the asylum system is broken, and I welcome the commitment to safe and legal routes for people to seek asylum. But there is much in this bill that I think is cruel, impractical and won't work. I pick out one example is making people have reviews every 2.5 years for 20 years. Yeah. It's cruel because those people are not going to be able to get a sense of security and safety. It's counterproductive because those people are going to struggle to get good quality, secure, high-paid jobs and contribute to our society. And it won't work. We already know that the Home Office can't cope with what it's currently having to do. My casework is full of people whose papers, when they're trying for immigration status, their papers get lost. The digital right to work system doesn't work properly. We've got a backlog in the asylum claim. How are you going to make this work?
Secretary.
I'm making changes that I will ensure will work. Let me assure her of that. And secondly, what I would say to her is I make no apology for disincentivising routes into this country which basically make people smugglers very, very rich men and fuel other disgusting crimes across Europe and in this country as well. It is right that we reserve a privileged status for those who get into work and education, as refugees on core protection will be able to do, and also those who come via safe and legal routes. That should be the proper way that people come into this country. It has better integration outcomes as well.
Nadia Whittam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Earlier today, the Home Secretary advised that I wait for the detail of the reforms before criticising them. Well, now the detail's out, and I'm afraid it doesn't reassure me in the slightest. It's hard to know where to begin when so much of what has been announced flies in the face of decency and compassion, but I'll focus on family reunion. Limiting access to family reunion for refugees will force children and spouses into the hands of the very people smugglers that the Home Secretary is seeking to smash. It will push them into unsafe dinghies, risking their lives. Would she be comfortable with this?
Home Secretary.
Well, I would urge her to look at the proposals on protection, work and study, and also on safe and legal routes. It is right that we try to pivot to a more humane system that privileges those who come not via paying people smugglers a lot of money. And on family reunification, let me just say to her this. British citizens at the moment have to meet thresholds and various qualifying tests before they can apply for family reunion. I think it is right that we bring the position in relation to refugees through the protection, work and study route to the same level.
And before I call the next member, members will have seen how many people are on their feet, and I will be needing to finish this statement by 8 o'clock. So please bear that in mind if I want to get everybody in, which I do. Paul Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome a sizable amount of what the Home Secretary has said today and is trying to do. Earlier this year, the Immigration Asylum Chamber of the Upper Tribunal, in the case of IX, reiterated the established administrative law requirements that government decision-making in asylum cases be proportionate and reasonable, and not expose individuals to prolonged or indefinite uncertainty, what the Home Office used to criticise under the Tories, in fact, as a lengthy limbo period. So can the Home Secretary clarify how her proposal to require a 20-year period before someone granted asylum may obtain a permanent right to remain complies with these fundamental principles?
Home Secretary.
I do believe it does comply with those principles. At the moment, at the end of the 5 years, there is already supposed to be a safe country review. We will bring that forward and we will make the safe country review a real thing. But as I've said to him and other members, we will also create alongside the core protection route, the protection work and study route as well, because we want to encourage people to make a contribution to this country.
Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In a previous life, I was a 999 call taker with the ambulance service and had the awful experience of answering a call to a distraught family desperate for help. But I couldn't help them. I couldn't help them save their loved one. And why? Because they couldn't understand the life-saving instructions which I was trying to give them over the phone due to the language barrier. Does the Home Secretary agree with me that there is nothing progressive about defending a status quo where vulnerable people are unable to access emergency services due to an inability to speak our language?
Home Secretary.
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and I endorse every word that she just said.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Common Travel Area allows movement across the UK, Northern Ireland and to the Republic of Ireland. It's been reported in the Irish media that a UK Home Office official briefed the Irish Department of Justice last Thursday in regards to what the Home Secretary was bringing forward. Can I ask her, what's the Irish Government's response to her proposals?
Home Secretary.
I'm afraid I don't recognise the briefing that he refers to.
Clive Efford.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I can recall a predecessor of my right honourable friend who described the Home Office as not being fit for purpose, and I've never known a time when there wasn't a backlog of cases with the Home Office. And this set of proposals is going to require people's cases to be reviewed every 30 months. Is that a realistic aim, and is she clear that she can make the Home Office fit for the purpose she set out today?
Home Secretary.
Well, we're already supposed to do safe country reviews, and we will ensure that they are done every 2.5 years. We will also ensure that wherever possible, refugees move into the protection, work and study route instead. And I just say to him, I recognise the phrase not fit for purpose. I've been very clear that I don't think the Home Office is fit for purpose yet. There is new management at the Home Office. They're getting on with making the changes that are necessary, and I will ensure it is both fit for purpose and able to enact the reforms that I've set out today.
Lara Sultana.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Sivanandan warned, and I quote, "What Enoch Powell says today, the Conservatives say tomorrow, and Labour legislates the day after. Seizing valuables belonging to asylum seekers, making refugees wait 20 years before they can apply to settle permanently, and deporting entire families, including children, who have built new lives here because their country of origin is deemed safe. These measures are straight out of the fascist playbook." The Home Secretary has described herself as a child of immigrants, so I ask her, is she proud to introduce measures that punish and persecute desperate and vulnerable people seeking sanctuary? And how does it feel to kick away the ladder and be praised by fascist Tommy Robinson? And I must add, he has a...
Order, Home Secretary. Home Secretary. Order, Home Secretary.
I'm just going to clarify a point of fact. She said I described myself as a child of immigrants. It's not a description, it's just a statement of fact. And everything else she said is beneath contempt.
Madam Deputy Speaker, migrants make immeasurable contribution to our communities. In Manchester, Russian, Wendy, who has Jamaican heritage, is a community health champion. Najma from Somalia leads local initiatives to tackle knife crime. And Hafsa grew up in the Middle East and leads nature improvements projects. So does my right honourable friend agree that the language we use to talk about immigration must reflect the important role immigrants play in the functioning of our nation?
Home Secretary.
I absolutely agree about the contribution that migrants and refugees make to our country, and it is precisely the reason that I'm making these reforms, because I can see a broken system that is creating deep division across our country, and I think it is important we not only fix this system but make sure that we retain public consent for having an asylum system at all.
Jim Allister.
At an earlier point in this debate, the Home Secretary said that nothing matters more to her than holding our own country together. Does she therefore accept that to succeed, her reforms must operate equally across the whole United Kingdom, including her adjustments to Article 8 of the European Convention? And if so, how is that application to be secured in Northern Ireland, given the impeding effect of Article 2 of the Windsor Framework? How is that going to be achieved?
Secretary.
All of the measures in the asylum policy statement are compliant with the Windsor Framework.
Anna Begum.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Deporting families after they've resettled here because their country is deemed safe is simply wrong. Could the Home Secretary tell us how the government determines what a safe country is, and will she publish the criteria? And given that she mentioned the DRC earlier, is she really saying it is a safe country over there? And will she also publish all existing returns agreements so that members of this House and indeed the British public can properly scrutinise them? I have done the reading and it's not in the detail.
Home Secretary.
Well, we already do safe country reviews, so we would seek to continue that. They are publicly available in terms of our position on different countries, and in fact mostly pass through secondary legislation in this House. I make no apology for a system that will privilege in the future those who come to this country through
resulting in increased numbers of refugees and asylum seekers arriving in the UK? And what steps will her government make toward proactive peace-building initiatives and the restoration of overseas humanitarian aid, which could address the root causes of displacement and reduce the long-term pressures on our asylum system?
Home Secretary.
Well, the government always plays its full part in peace processes wherever we can. We put our shoulder to the wheel on the delicate and diplomatic efforts that are required to bring conflicts to an end. But that is not actually what is relevant for what we're discussing today. We have a broken system today. We have thousands of people stuck in the system today. And we have thousands of people coming on boats through the north of France through reasons that are nothing to do with the British government. But we still fulfil our international obligations, and we will do so going forward as well. But I make no apology for wanting to move to a system where we incentivise safe and legal routes instead.
Colette Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agree with the government that we desperately need to tackle the issue of illegal migration. I hear this at the doors and see it in my mail each week in Birmingham, Erdington. Can the Home Secretary tell us how, after these proposed changes come into force, how quickly will the government ensure that safe legal routes are in place, because this will be the key to stopping the boats? And also, how will the government deal with the issue of those that have claimed that they are minors, but they're clearly not? And that is another massive issue. Thank you, Madam Deputy Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend. We are moving to a system of age verification based on AI modelling, which we believe is effective in actually being able to verify someone's true age. So we are moving on that. And let me assure her, we will move to legislate on these, consult and then legislate on these measures as quickly as possible. I am seized of the need to move quickly to restore public confidence. And as we get order and control into the system, we will start opening up the safe and legal routes. They will be modest to begin with, but they will grow and be more generous over time as we restore order and control.
Sarah Perching.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Daresbury Asylum Hotel in Runcorn has been emptied thanks to my by-election campaign. But what assurances can the Secretary of State give my constituents of Runcorn and Helsby that the many HMOs in Runcorn will be emptied of illegal migrants and criminals under her government, and that they will be deported without delay, never to be allowed legal entry into the UK?
Well, it is this government that is exiting hotels and will do so. It's a manifesto commitment that we will do so by the end of the Parliament, and I intend to bring that forward as much as possible. And let me say to her, we will always fulfil our international obligations, but I make no mistake for wanting to privilege safe and legal routes rather than illegal entry into the country.
Samantha Niblett.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Every single day I campaigned in South Derbyshire whilst a candidate and since becoming an MP last July. Immigration has been the #1 issue dividing my communities. They have either been pushed to apathy, and we're talking about Labour voters here, or they've been pushed towards reform. I cannot thank her enough for today's statement, because finally at last my constituents feel heard. But my question to her is, how frequently can they expect an update so that they can see that these promises being made today will result in delivery sooner rather than later?
Home Secretary.
Well, I thank her for her comments and her question. Let me assure her that I know that the way to build public confidence in the new system is not just to announce the reforms here, but to get on with legislating and then implementing those reforms so that her constituents, my constituents and people all across the country can see the impact and can see that we can fix this system and that the public confidence in having an asylum system at all can be retained.
Adnan Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Stripping people of the very few belongings they have left after fleeing war and persecution runs contrary to the very principle of asylum, a principle rooted in protection and compassion. So I ask the Home Secretary, how do such measures help address the real root causes of displacement and the refugee crisis, war, destabilisation, persecution and dangerous crossings?
Secretary.
Well, I shouldn't be surprised to see the Honourable Gentleman indulging in misinformation here. Let me tell him the example I used in my speech. Somebody who has access to £800 a month from their family, has enough money to acquire an Audi and is not expected to contribute to the cost of his asylum support at all. I think it is right that we change that. British citizens have to have give account of the assets they have before they access benefit support. I don't think that these individuals should be in a privileged position if they have access or have assets of high value. I've made it very clear when this is not about taking jewellery off people or their wedding rings and so on at the border. That will never happen, but it is right that those who have assets are asked to contribute to the cost of their asylum accommodation.
Abtisam Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Under the previous government, we have had hostile policy after hostile policy, from the go-home bans to Windrush scandal to Rwanda, all of which failed to deter dangerous crossings or fix the asylum system. What is dividing communities is the constant anti-refugee rhetoric pumped into our politics, which has resulted in the vile racism that the Home Secretary has been subjected to, vile racism that I have been subjected to, vile racism that my mother has been subjected to. Let's be clear, there are some people who will never be appeased, who will constantly stir hatred in our communities. The new proposals of forcing refugees to reapply every 2 years just adds huge cost and pressure to an already overstretched system. Has the Home Secretary assessed the cost to the Home Office of processing thousands of repeated applications, an area of law in which I used to practice in, and how will this impact on an already overstretched system facing huge backlogs?
Secretary.
Well, let me tell her, what I think is dividing our country and communities all over our country is an unfair, out-of-control system that's putting pressure on communities across the whole of the nation, and it is incumbent on me as a Home Secretary and on this government to fix that system and to retain public consent for having an asylum system at all. And it is also my job to make sure that we have the administration capacity and the funding to enact these reforms, which we will.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. If you look at a heat map of where asylum dispersals take place, it tends to be in the city London and then the towns and the cities of the Midlands and the North West that least have the resources to help them. And thankfully, in Stoke-on-Trent, we've got organisations like our CAB and ASHA who are doing what they can. So can I ask the Secretary of State, when she is looking at this policy in the round, as she will do, can she look at that dispersal mechanism to make sure that everyone is taking the support that they should do? And could I also go on the point around the national referral mechanism for modern slavery? It is one of the most difficult pieces to access if you are somebody who has been trafficked into this country. You need to be put in by a national first responder through a third party. Can she set out a little bit about what her changes are going to be and give an assurance that those national first responders won't be removed from that process, because they do a very good job in vetting people before they get access?
I thank my friend for his two questions. Let me assure him that we already run a dispersal model which is designed to ensure that the burden is spread out across the country, and we will carry on doing so. And on modern slavery legislation, we've already consulted. That consultation has closed, and I will be looking carefully at the responses that we have. This is a very well-intentioned, much-needed piece of legislation. I do believe that it's important that we crack down on modern slavery in our country, but it is being used to frustrate legitimate removal of people from this country. I saw that just within the first few days as Home Secretary, where I had to change policy very quickly to prevent people thwarting their referral, their removal to France under the one-in, one-out deal. That is what I have in mind, and those are the changes that we will make.
Colin Naismith.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement today and for taking the bold action necessary to tackle the chaos and lack of control that we inherited in our asylum system. But does she agree with me that these changes are as much about incentivising the right behaviour by creating those capped legal routes to asylum as they are about taking tough action to break the status quo, which sees thousands of people crossing the Channel in a dangerous, uncontrolled and unfair way?
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and I endorse every word that he just said.
Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. What measures is the Home Secretary taking to dismantle the criminal gangs exploiting both legitimate and illegitimate businesses to facilitate illegal channel crossings, and can she make details of regulation action that's being taken to prevent the use of assets such as shops on our high streets and supply of life jackets, boats and other components needed in the dangerous crossings by illegal immigrants and by criminal gangs?
Home Secretary.
I can assure her that we are engaging in intense law enforcement work, both through the National Crime Agency and working collaboratively with our partners in Europe, especially in France. There have already been 350 disruptions of organised immigration crime activity. We've confiscated numerous small boats ourselves, and again working with our European partners to do so. The sum total of all of those efforts has prevented 20,000 illegal crossings across the Channel already. We will grow this work. We know it is a very important part of the picture for how we deal with the problem of small boats.
David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is about fairness. My constituents across Stoke-on-Trent North and Kidsgrove are good, kind and compassionate people. We've got a proud tradition of supporting those who need our help the most, yet they know, like we all do, that the current immigration system is broken. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that, unlike the previous government, who were more concerned about campaigning on the matter, we must take action to bring back that fundamental value, our British value of fairness, so that we can resolve those issues at our borders?
Again, I agree with every word my colleague and my honourable friend has just said. Fairness and contribution, they are Labour values, they're British values, and they underpin the totality of these reforms.
David Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Home Secretary for her statement, and particularly for the commitment to new, safe, legal routes. There's been a lot of talk of morality in this discussion, and there absolutely should be. It's too important to get wrong. So does she agree with me that tolerating a system where men, women and children are encouraged onto flimsy rubber boats to risk their lives in the English Channel when they are already safe where they are is not a moral choice?
He's absolutely right. Fixing this broken system is a moral mission for me, because I believe we cannot look the other way and pretend that it's just talking points from our political enemies that are driving division in our country. The broken system is what is driving division in our country. I am determined to put that right, to make sure we can divide our country, but also retain public consent for having an asylum system to begin with.
Daniel Francis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement to control our borders, which I know will be welcomed by the majority of constituents across Bexley and Crayford. Now, in recent months, we've seen both our police and enforcement officers, particularly in Crayford, carry out raids and work to arrest people working illegally here. So can I ask the Home Secretary to set how the measures announced today will continue to tackle that work around people working here illegally?
Well, cracking down on illegal working is absolutely crucial to all of these reforms, and to make sure that we can retain public consent for not just our asylum system, but for our legal migration system as well. We've already seen a record number of raids, over 11,000 since this government took office, leading to 8,000 arrests and over 1,000 removals of those with no right to be in this country. We will build on all of that work.
Charlotte Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Warrington has one of the largest communities of Hong Kongers in the country, many of whom I met with over this weekend, where they reiterated their profound concern that the BNO 5+1 scheme is at risk as a result of the government's wider agenda on tackling issues in the asylum and immigration system. Will the Home Secretary give a clear commitment to Hong Kongers that the UK is their home, that the British state will keep its promise to BNOs and Hong Kong refugees, and that the 5+1 scheme is safe?
We are committed and have always supported the repatriation of Hong Kongers. The consultation on earned settlement will be announced to this House very shortly, later this week, I believe, and I look forward to discussing that in detail with her then.
Kat Eccles.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a delegate to the Council of Europe, I will always defend the ECHR and its institution and treaties, and that's why it's important to talk about it in the correct context. In the last 45 years, the Strasbourg Court has has ruled against the UK on immigration rules only 3 times. And in the latest year, for which figures are available, the number of successful human rights-based appeals represented 0.73% of all sentenced foreign national offenders. And the last time Article 8 successfully applied to block a deportation was in 2020. So why does the Home Secretary believe that Article 3 and Article 8 of the ECHR are blocking the UK from controlling its borders when the data simply does not back that up?
I don't think that the data relating to the Strasbourg court is necessarily reflective of what we're seeing in our own courts here at home. It is clear to us that the application of Article 8, which I know she knows is a qualified right, and it is absolutely appropriate for governments to dictate how that right is applied in their individual countries, and we will do so by bringing forward second session legislation. We think that there is a case for reform of Article 8, and there is absolutely a case for continuing the discussions with European partners at the Council of Europe on Article 3, because we are not the only country that is seeing the expansion of Article 3 have implications for the deportation, in particular of foreign national offenders. The case for reform, we think, is strong. We have the right solutions, but we are signatories to the ECHR, and we will always be so under this government.
Liam Conlon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for her statement? And I was really proud of how my Beckenham and Penge constituency came together to welcome Ukrainian families after the conflict there through schemes such as Homes for Ukraine. I'm pleased the government has announced today to expand safe and legal routes like this, recognising the UK's responsibility and desire to support those in need and removing the need for refugees to make dangerous journeys. Can the Home Secretary set out how quickly we can expect these safe and legal routes to start operating?
Well, I would hope we can move very quickly indeed. As I've said, though, we will do so as we restore order and control to the broken system that we have at the moment. The safe and legal routes will, being candid with the House, begin modest to start with, but will grow over time. As we restore order and control to the current system, we will see those routes grow over time, and we will work with partners from across the philanthropy sector, the UN Refugee Agency, other stakeholders as well, as we design the new community sponsorship models, which will in the future bear the load of helping to bring refugees into this country and to settle them and to ultimately integrate them successfully into this country.
Tony Vaughan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I draw attention to my register of interest. I acknowledge the gargantuan task the Home Secretary has to regain public confidence in our asylum system. We must ensure that, as well as fairness and contribution, that compassion is also reflected in our asylum system, which is also a quintessentially British value and is reflected in the work of charities like Napier Friends in my constituency who support those staying at Napier Barracks. My question is about the appeal reforms in relation to professionally trained adjudicators. What is the rationale for this when we already have a specialist judiciary with expertise to decide these cases, and what is it about the adjudicator model that will mean they are in a better position to decide these cases than under the current system?
Well, firstly, he does mention compassion, and I would say to him that the compassion of our reforms will be reflected in the safe and legal routes where we will accept refugees into our country through a community sponsorship model, resettle and integrate them successfully. That is what will bear the load of fulfilling our international obligations, and I know our people across our country will be proud to do so, because compassion is, he is right, a fundamental value of all of our people, but so is fairness and contribution, and taken together, these reforms, I believe, strike the right balance. And what I can say to him on the appeal system is it's completely shot to pieces at the moment. It's riven with backlogs. Even increasing judicial sitting days does not make the difference. I think it's absolutely appropriate that we design a new appeal system, independent, with early legal advice available right at the start, and where it is proper for the government to set the framework for the speed at which cases can be heard, including fast-tracking those claims that have no chance of success or are from countries which have low grant rates in the first place. He will know that listing at the moment within the current system is a matter for the independent judiciary. We would never seek to interfere with that, but with the new appeal system, we as a government will be able to set the framework for the speed at which cases are heard, as well as the provision of legal advice at the start, so we have one claim, one appeal, and certainty at the end of that process.
Brash.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this statement today and can say very clearly to the Home Secretary she will have my complete support in implementing the measures within it and doing whatever it takes to fix our broken asylum system and secure our borders. One of the consequences of this broken system is what can only be described as the targeting of deprived communities like Hartlepool by private companies charged with providing asylum accommodation. We've started to bring the numbers down. Does the Home Secretary agree with me? That process must continue to put fairness back into our system.
My honourable friend is absolutely right. We do need to bring fairness back into the system. We need to resolve the problems with supported asylum accommodation as well. Taken together, these reforms and this government's plans on exiting hotels, getting into large sites instead, I believe will relieve the pressure that he sees in his community and across the country as well.
Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I take great pride in our country's track record of offering sanctuary to people fleeing conflict and persecution, and I know Afghans, Syrians, Ukrainians and many others who are now settled here and making great contributions to our economy and society in our hospitals, our schools and our businesses. So I welcome the Home Secretary's commitment to getting the proposed safe and legal routes working urgently. And will she also ensure that the right incentives and support are in place so that people arriving this way can integrate successfully?
I agree with my honourable friend, and as I've already set out, for those who are on court protection, we will seek to encourage people to move into the protection work and study route so that they can start contributing and integrating more effectively into this country. That will get them to a slightly earlier settlement period as well. But the bulk of these reforms will focus on safe and legal routes, which will be the most privileged route to settlement in this country. It is right that that is the case. It is the best way to integrate people into this country. The community sponsorship model is the way forward, and I look forward to working with her and others in the House as we design that and move forward.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. South Norfolk expects to have a robust and compassionate asylum process. I welcome this statement today. One of the aspects that I'm most interested in is the penultimate paragraph on page 28 of the document, which states that the new model will give greater say to communities and support refugees to settle and become self-sufficient. I was wondering if the Home Secretary could expand on what mechanisms would be put in place to make sure that happens.
Well, we will design the new system, taking all of the learnings from the Homes for Ukraine scheme and other models as well. We will work closely with the UN Refugee Agency as well as other international partners, and we will work with philanthropists and community organisations, local councils, universities, businesses and others here in this country. We know that there are people who really want to be able to sponsor refugees and play their part in offering sanctuary to those most in need. People recognise that the current system is broken. As we get to grips with the current broken system, we will be able to increase the number of people that come on safe and legal routes in the medium and long term, and that is the right future and that is the right compassionate answer, and it enables us to fulfil our international obligations as well.
Jacob Collier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary has outlined common sense measures to ensure that the British public is no longer asked to fund or accommodate foreign national offenders. At the same time, she is right that our country has a proud and long-standing tradition of offering sanctuary to those fleeing persecution. So therefore, can she confirm that the United Kingdom will send no individual back to a place where they may be tortured, killed or persecuted?
We will never send someone back to a country where they will be tortured. We will always abide by our international obligations in that regard, and we believe that the totality of the reforms that I have set out today strike the right balance between making sure that we continue to fulfil our international obligations but have a system for asylum that can retain public support for having an asylum system at all.
Steve Race.
Deputy Speaker, Exeter is a proud city of sanctuary, and we've welcomed communities of Hong Kongers, Ukrainians and Afghans over recent years. So many of my residents will be very pleased and welcome this re-establishment of safe and legal routes for refugees, which were long forgotten by the party opposite. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that safe and legal routes do offer a real sort of element of a system that has control and order in it, and can she set out how the system will be flexible in terms of when geopolitical practices change?
Well, we will always retain the flexibility to respond to particular crises, as we've done in the past, and that we supported even when the last government was in power. We will design these routes alongside international as well as domestic partners as well, to make sure that the community sponsorship model learns all of the best lessons from previous schemes and is absolutely world-class as a system, so that we can play our full part in offering people sanctuary who most need it.
Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Home Secretary's statement on how the government will make our asylum policy fit for this country. The broken immigration and asylum system under the Conservatives created an unprecedented backlog. This hindered the Home Office's ability to process legitimate cases, including nurses and care workers working in NHS and care homes who are seeking to extend their work visas. How will the Home Secretary ensure that the measures she has announced will be properly enforced so we can restore order to our borders?
Well, I can assure him it will fall to me to make sure that the system we have is capable of implementing all of these reforms. We will consult and legislate as quickly as possible, and it is on me to make sure that the Home Office can handle the work that's coming its way. But I would assure him that getting the administration is a part of the picture, but getting these reforms passed and implemented across the country is the most important thing that we can do.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the measures that the Home Secretary has set out to restore order and fairness will be very welcome in Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland, but the overriding sentiment will be a feeling that we will believe it when we see it. I'm afraid trust is so low after years of broken promises, and so what assurances can the Home Secretary give that she will not only talk the talk but also walk the walk as well?
Oh, I can assure him I don't believe in doing anything other than walking the walk. I totally hear what his constituents will tell him. It's what I hear from my own constituents. We will believe it when we see it, because it is a low trust environment, and over many years trust in the immigration system overall has been degraded. It's why it's something that is causing such division today. It is on me to make sure that this package of reforms is implemented. It's on me to make sure that the Home Office is able to implement them effectively, and I would say to his constituents and people all over our country, judge us on what we deliver through these reforms.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The proposal to raise the threshold for indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 20 is deeply concerning. At a time when far-right groups exploit fear and spread misinformation, our government should lead with compassion and fairness, not forcing some of the most vulnerable in our society to live in limbo for 2 decades. Will the Minister explain how denying security and rights for 2 decades reflects British values of justice and humanity? And what will access to services look like for people during that time?
Tell my honourable friend not to defend a status quo that sees people spend thousands of pounds paying people smugglers a ton of money to get on a boat and come across the channel through a dangerous crossing that puts their own lives and that of others at risk. I would really urge him not to defend a broken status quo, engage with the detail of these proposals, which reflect a new protection work and study route, which will be open to those who are offered core protection in this country, and that we will open new safe and legal routes as well.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Home Secretary share my concern that the scrutiny from the benches opposite is somewhat sparse this evening? But on a more serious note, can she reassure my constituents that one of the key outcomes of this statement is that we will finally bring down the taxpayers' bill for asylum accommodation? Time and again, this is a concern raised with me by my constituents, and to reduce that bill will help many feel that there is far greater fairness in our asylum system.
Well, I suspect the lower numbers on the other side are down to the fact there's not that many of them anymore. And what I would also say is he's absolutely right on the cost. Fairness and contribution are the principles that underpin this asylum policy statement, and I hope that as we bring costs down, we can retain public support for the asylum system overall.
Madam Deputy Speaker, there are quite a few things needing challenged in this statement. First off is that Britain has always been a welcoming, generous and warm place for immigrants and people seeking asylum. There will be many people from an Irish background whose ancestors faced prejudice, as there will be many Jews and Muslims that have been the victims of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and let's not forget about the Windrush scandal. With what we have heard today, I'm afraid, the government has surrendered to past discriminations and the vile rhetoric of reform that we hear today. Does the Home Secretary not see that removing the legal obligation to support asylum seekers who would be otherwise destitute is as far away from Labour Party principles and values as we can get?
Again, I would just really urge my honourable friend not to defend a broken status quo and not to defend people who commit crimes and are funded by the British taxpayer while they do so.
Jonathan Hinder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Having gangsters control who comes into our country is intolerable. It's not fair, it's not humane, it's not socialist. And my constituents in Pendle and Clitheroe say to me that they just want control. They want the politicians they send to this chamber to make the decisions on who comes into this country, not the gangsters. So can the Home Secretary reassure my constituents that she will not rest until every migrant, refugee or otherwise, comes to this country through a safe and legal route?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. He is absolutely right. There is nothing humane or socialist or indeed any other group that people might want to put themselves into about paying people smugglers a lot of money to get into a boat in the Channel. It's a dangerous thing to do. It fuels further crime. It is not the way that people should seek to come to this country, and I will not rest until the way that people come to this country to seek refuge, be granted refugee status, is through a safe and legal route instead.
Final question, Amanda.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to start by fully supporting the Home Secretary's statement today and in getting the balance right. In Ports of North, we've seen how quickly immigration misinformation can spread on our high streets, on local forums and even, Madam Deputy Speaker, forcing businesses to put up signs on developments to say who will be living there. This chaos took hold because the Tories never got a grip, gave up on governing and allowed division to reign across our country. Does the Home Secretary agree that our new enforcement plans and streamlined appeals system are essential not only to enable much-needed action, but also essential to restore trust and give clarity to stop refuelling misinformation division in our communities?
Well, I do agree with my honourable friend, and I endorse every word that she said, Madam Deputy Speaker.
And that concludes the statement. Point of order, Carla Denyer.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State accused one of my Green colleagues of hypocrisy when in fact she was objecting to the warehousing of asylum seekers in military barracks, which is a position in line with Greens in the Chamber and in fact all major refugee rights organisations. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do wonder if the Secretary of State would like to withdraw her grossly misleading remarks and baseless accusation of hypocrisy.
Point of order, Adnan Hussain. I understand that this also relates to remarks made by the Home Secretary.
During my intervention, the Home Secretary stated, and I quote, that she shouldn't be surprised to see the honourable gentleman indulging in misinformation in here. Madam Deputy Speaker, I take my responsibilities in this House extremely seriously. I'm confident that every point I raised was made in good faith, based on publicly available information, and was neither misleading nor inaccurate. May I therefore seek your guidance on how a member may respond or have the record clarified when a minister makes such characterisation without providing any evidence, clarification or correction, in particular where it risks implying dishonesty on the part of a member who has had no opportunity to respond further at that moment.
Say in response to him, I'm very happy to say it wasn't misleading, it was just wrong. So I can clarify that for the record. And let me say to the Honourable Lady opposite, I don't think, I think it's a fair point of debate to point out that the Green Party is often indulging in hypocrisy, and I shall look carefully at what her colleague has said in relation to the large military sites. But I would say to her, the Green Party never seem to offer any solution, only commentary that does not work.
And I thank both members for their points of order, and their comments are now on the record. We now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Bill Committee. Now.
Order.
Be showing the full details of my plans for far-reaching reforms to the UK asylum system to restore order and control to our borders. We have learned the lessons from our international partners, including Denmark, where fundamental reform to their system has seen asylum claims at a 40-year low. The impact of this government's plans will be to restore order and control to the border so we can be the open, tolerant and generous country that we know ourselves to be.
Nadia Whitson. The Denmark-style policies briefed in the last couple of days are dystopian. It's shameful that a Labour government is ripping up the rights and protections of people who have endured unimaginable trauma. Is this how we'd want to be treated if we were fleeing for our lives? Of course not. So how can we be adopting such obviously cruel policies? Is the Home Secretary proud that the government has sunk to such depths that it's now being praised by Tommy Robinson?
Well, Mr. Speaker, look, I'm disappointed at the nature of the question from my honourable friend. I hope she will look at the detail of the reforms. And what I've said already on these matters is that we have a proper problem that it is our moral duty to fix. Our asylum system is broken. The breaking of that asylum system is causing huge division across our whole country. It is a moral mission for me to resolve that division across our country. I know that the reforms I will be setting out later on today can fix this system, and in doing so can unite what is today a divided country.
The Home Secretary likes to talk tough whilst the numbers continue to rise. So as part of that statement that she's going to bring to the House, can she confirm that detailed modelling will be published and whether she has shared that modelling with Number 10?
Well, the honourable gentleman's question would have had a bit more force if he had apologised for being part of a government that fundamentally broke our migration system and presided over the crisis inherited by this government. Of course we will model the impact of our policies. This is a sweeping set of reforms, the most significant in modern times. They will bring down the number of arrivals, increase the number of removals of those who have no right to be in this country. We will build on our track record in government that has seen removals be increased, and the totality of these reforms, I believe, will unlock the generosity of this country in creating new safe and legal routes which will grow more generous over time.
Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary.
Well, it's good to see the Home Secretary here taking some time off from her leadership campaign. She is quite clearly preparing. She's quite clearly preparing a one-in, one-out policy for Number 10 Downing Street. Now, the Home Secretary has announced she wants to replace the government's entire immigration policy with Denmark's. Is that because the government has failed so badly in the year and a half since the election? Because since the election, illegal channel crossings have surged 55%, up to 62,000. New asylum claims have reached a record ever. And the numbers in asylum hotels have actually gone up under this government. And in just the 75 days since she became Home Secretary, 10,000 illegal immigrants have crossed the English Channel. But the Home Secretary...
Oh, sorry. You've got to at least try and get to a question in relative time. Don't forget we're having a big debate shortly on it, Chris.
OK, I'll ask a question. Will she agree with us? That to control our borders, we must come out of the ECHR, enabling us to deport all illegal immigrants within a week of arrival?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think we can all agree that the honourable gentleman's leadership campaign is going absolutely nowhere. Let me tell him once again, his party reverts to an unworkable solution, a total gimmick, just like their failed Rwanda plan, £700 million spent and a total of 4 volunteers returned. Always from the party opposite, gimmicks and solutions that would never ever work. What you get from this government is a track record of an increase in removals based on what we inherited from that government and a proper plan that will fix this broken system.
Chris Philp.
Well, unlike her leader, our leader is not going anywhere. Our leader's not going anywhere, but hers most certainly is. She talks about out of Number 10. She talks about the Rwanda scheme. That Rwanda scheme never even started. It worked in Australia. It would have worked here. And after they cancelled it with no replacement, numbers have surged. The truth is that under this government, illegal immigration has gone up. There is a crime wave, including rape and murder, going with it. Her ideas are not radical enough. She wants to give illegal immigrants a 20-year path to citizenship.
Order, please. I'm not being funny. The idea is to ask a question. Statements will be coming later. We're going to go through all this. Really doesn't help. If you want to pick which colleagues you don't want from your side to ask a question, because that's what you're taking the time off. Please, Shadow Home Secretary.
She wants to give illegal immigrants a 20-year path to citizenship. We want to deport them. Will she accept our proposal to come out of the ECHR so we can actually control our borders?
Well, I'm sure all of his members will be delighted that the Leader of the Opposition is going absolutely nowhere. We're very happy to see her remain in place, Mr. Speaker. This government will not come out of the European Convention on Human Rights. What we are going to do is reform the way that Article 8 in particular is applied to immigration rules within our country. That is because this government rolls up its sleeves and does the actual hard work of governing, unlike his party, which just gave up altogether.
Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat, spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the point of asylum policy, the Liberal Democrats recently defeated an attempt by the Honourable Member for Clacton, backed vociferously by the Conservatives, who he's trying to kill, to rip this country out of the ECHR. Metaphorically trying to kill. Leaving the ECHR would do nothing to halt small boat crossings, but it would deny British people hard-won rights. Free speech, the Hillsborough inquiry, and protections for older people. The government has announced it's reviewing certain articles of the ECHR. The Home Secretary has just referenced it. Can she give us a cast-iron guarantee that when she's working on these changes, she will do so in partnership with other signatories to the Convention, and she will not follow the Conservatives and Reform in seeking to isolate this country on the international stage?
Well, myself and the Prime Minister could not be clearer. We are not coming out of the European Convention on Human Rights. We are going to pursue reform, in particular of Article 8, which is a qualified right under the Convention, and I will set out the plans to do so later on today. And there is a conversation happening with our partners at the Council of Europe in relation to the application of Article 3. So there is a conversation that is already happening on reform of the European Convention, both here at home and the domestic legislation that we will pursue, but also at the Council of Europe itself. And that is the approach that this government will continue with.
Joyce Fenton.
Number 3, please, Mr. Speaker.
Start.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will group this response with questions 6 and 9. Tackling violence against women and girls is a top priority for this government, and our mission to halve violence against women and girls in a decade has begun. We will deliver a transformative cross-government approach underpinned by the new strategy, which we will publish soon.
Mr. Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ending the presumption of parental contact in the family courts was a huge and long overdue step, worked hard for by campaigners. That presumption allowed post-separation abuse to often continue. Now, while the MOJ is leading on that, can the Minister tell me what the Home Office is doing to make sure that we properly police and enforce other ways of tackling post-separation abuse so it can't continue?
I thank my honourable friend, and also I'd like to thank him and give special mention to him and the member for Penistone and Stockbridge, who worked so tirelessly since they arrived in this House, to join with some of us who have been trying to change the presumption of contact in domestic abuse cases for 11 years with no success from those opposite. I work very closely with the Victims Minister and the Minister for Courts, and we will be making sure that it is part of a package of security that is purely cross-government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent contacted me because she had been drugged and violently raped by a man that she knew, who she had worked for as a nanny for his children. She describes this man as a high net worth individual. Despite providing detailed evidence to the police, she says ultimately it came down to her word against his, and she feels his financial standing and his influence meant that her case never went to the CPS. The Minister will know very well that only less than 4% of rape allegations actually result in summons or charge. So, Mr. Speaker, at which point are we going to stop talking about how unfair the system is and actually do something that means that poor constituents like mine get the justice that they deserve?
I thank the honourable lady and would be happy to speak to her and her constituent about their particular case. It is one I have heard similarly with regard to high worth, high powerful rapists or alleged rapists. Look, undertaking a proper change to how our policing and our justice system works for rape victims, whether that's through Operation Soteria or other interventions such as the new policing centre for Vogue, to actually improve this across the country and not just see pockets of good practice, is a vitally important thing, and it is going to take time, but I am more than happy to work with her on this.
The Singh Joseph.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for her reply. The Minister will be aware of the important role played by specialists by and for organisations in supporting victims from minority communities and bringing crucial cultural awareness to the table. Sikh Women's Aid recently held an all-women's meeting in which they focused on the trauma and fear generated by recent racially aggravated attacks in the West Midlands, including in my constituency. So can the Minister outline what steps the Home Office is taking to ensure that specialist community support services, including by and for organisations such as Sikh Women's Aid, are properly resourced so that victims from all backgrounds, and whether that be white working class girls or Sikh women and girls, can receive culturally sensitive support?
I thank my honourable friend, and we recognise the vital role of the specialist by and for services in providing tailored support to victims and survivors, and it has been my personal pleasure over many years to work alongside the brilliant women at Sikh Women's Aid who operate so furtively in our local area. I meet regularly with IMCAN, the umbrella lead for such by and for services, to seek solutions to exactly this problem of ensuring that there isn't a postcode lottery and that everybody can have specialist support.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I'm very much looking forward to the new Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, so I wonder whether the Minister could give a bit more of a clue as to when we might see it, and also will it include a single definition of violence against women and girls which is applied consistently across law enforcement and the Department?
I thank the Honourable Lady, and I very much look forward to coming to her committee at the publication of it, no doubt, to discuss that. It is not for the Home Office to tell law enforcement exactly what the definition is in these regards, and obviously there is a definition of domestic abuse, of sexual violence in the law, but we will lay out clearly what we mean by violence against women and girls, and police operational matters will be being corralled, like I say, by the new centre, which has had £13 million investment to make sure that there is a standardised practice across the country to ensure that we are all working to the same hymn sheet.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Government is right to have abolished the role of Police and Crime Commissioner. Liberal Democrats have been campaigning for that for some time. But many victims' organisations rely on the PCC core grant to fund violence against women initiatives. So will the Minister confirm that cash will not be lost by those organisations, including mine in Eastbourne, and that they will retain it after this reform?
I absolutely can confirm that the part of the Police and Crime Commissioner's role of commissioning local victim services will be brought into new systems. It will not be that that money is gone from the centre, it is that how it will be given out. I can't say for certain that all organisations that currently have the money on the basis that they currently have it, because nobody could commit to that. That is Commissioner's job, but we will be making sure that all victims commissioning, and look forward to the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, because there will be a huge amount in that.
Sarah Dyke.
Mr Speaker, my constituent Fiona from Milbourne Port is a victim of historical rape. With recent reporting highlighting the vile attitudes of some in regard to historical rape victims, Fiona told me her confidence in the judicial systems and the police have been well and truly knocked, as detectives tell her there is no starting point for their inquiries. So what steps is the Minister taking, along with Cabinet colleagues, to support historical victims of violence against women and girls?
I thank the Honourable Lady, and there is absolutely no reason why historical cases shouldn't be brought forward and reviewed, and as part of the work following on from the Casey review, certainly in cases of historical child sexual abuse, the opening of no further action cases has absolutely been working at pace through Operation Beacon Port, but more broadly, there are review systems, and I will send the information about the organisations that the Home Office works with, who work alongside the police, to look into the very review systems that might be needed for people whose cases, like yours and like the one earlier, where they haven't been picked up.
Shadow Minister Katie Lamb.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, in March this year, the then Permanent Secretary of the Home Office said the strategy to tackle violence against women and girls would be published before summer recess. In July, the Minister committed to September. My honourable friend, the member for Rutland and Stamford, wrote to the Minister 6 weeks ago to ask for an update and is yet to receive a response. We would all like to see progress in halving violence against women and girls. But commenting on the delay, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, Dame Nicole Jacobs, said, "I fail to see where the momentum within government is coming from to ensure this commitment succeeds." What does the Minister make of the Domestic Abuse Commissioner's words, and can she please reiterate her commitment to publish the strategy before the end of the year?
As somebody who meets with the Domestic Abuse Commissioner on a very, very regular basis, I can't say that I categorise that she would ever say that I didn't have the enthusiasm to make this work. But perhaps I am wrong, and I shall ask her what she meant by those comments. What I can absolutely say is that it will come. It will be out very soon, and what I would want to say is it will be out when it is the best it can be, but we don't need to wait for a piece of paper to start our action. So, I mean, Mr. Speaker, I won't take up too much time by the list of about 13 things that we have already changed in the last 18 months, such as Raneem's Law, such as a DAPO rollout, which for 4 years waited.
Thank you. Helen Morgan.
Number 4, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
The government is increasing resources in neighbourhood policing teams and putting in place stronger measures to prevent farm theft and fly tipping. We're working closely with the NPCC to deliver their rural and wildlife crime strategy, which will be published imminently and will be a joined-up approach ensuring we're tackling crimes which have devastating consequences for our rural communities.
Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer, and there's no doubt that my constituents are concerned by crimes like equipment theft and wildlife crime, but they're also really worried about drug dealing taking place in broad daylight, in parks in our villages and in country lanes. And I wonder if the Minister could highlight what the government's drug strategy is to stop our young people being targeted by organised criminals, and also how we improve community policing in rural places so that those criminals don't have the confidence to target our young people so willingly.
Thank her for the question. In terms of community policing, of course, we're putting 3,000 extra community police in our neighbourhoods by next April, and there will be a named officer that people can contact. In terms of the wider drugs problem, she's absolutely right to highlight it, and this government is putting in place, has put in place since we came into power, a very successful County Lines programme, which is targeting the lines where people are forced, often exploited, to take drugs across the country. I'm very happy to talk to her about it more. I've seen it for myself in action in Merseyside and the impact that it's having. But she's right to highlight what is a very deep problem, and we are absolutely determined to tackle it.
Neil Duncan-Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There were over 2,000 recorded wildlife crimes last year, but less than 50 resulted in convictions. I therefore welcome the government's commitment to consult on strengthening the Hunting Act. Can the Minister update the House on what discussions they've had with departmental colleagues to ensure effective enforcement of any forthcoming legislation? And will the Home Office consider making key wildlife offences, including fox hunting, notifiable crimes, so these crimes are recorded and prioritised by the police force?
Friend for his question, he's right to highlight these crimes and the need for us to prioritise in a way that it wasn't under the previous government. The strategy that is coming out, the NPCC strategy on rural and wildlife crime, will set operational and organisational policing priorities in respect to tackling these crimes, and it will be published imminently, and I'd love to, once it's been published, have a proper conversation with the honourable gentleman.
Minister Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rural crime and tool theft are out of control. Every 21 minutes, a tradesman's tools are stolen. And when a farmer or tradesman has their equipment stolen, it causes complete misery and costs them severely. Then all too often, their means of work are sold in broad daylight at car boot sales. Will the government adopt our rural crime and tool theft plan to crack down on the sale of stolen goods and the misery being caused to so many farmers and tradesmen?
The honourable gentleman will know that we are committed to the implementation of the Equipment Theft Act and fully support the intentions. Indeed, it was brought forward by a member of his own party, and we support that, and we are working with colleagues across the policing landscape to make sure that we can do just that. But I won't take any lessons from the honourable gentleman who left crime in the state that it had no rural crime strategy, unlike this government, and whose record took our police away from our neighbourhoods. We will put them back.
Mohammed
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'll group this